Hello, my dear students. I'm Professor Geeta Bansal from Punjab University, Chandigarh. Now, before we proceed, it's important to understand what is a decision. Well, the word decision has been derived from the Latin word decider, which means a cutting away or a cutting off, or in a practical sense. Thus, a decision involves a cut of alternatives between those that are desirable and those that are not desirable. The decision is a kind of a desirable alternative, and Lopez has defined a decision as a decision represents a judgment, a final resolution of a conflict of needs, means, and goals, and a commitment to action made in face of uncertainty, complexity, and even irrationality. Let's find out what are the different types of decisions. Now, the decisions can be understood in terms of programmed and non-programmed decisions, one. And second, there are strategic and tactical decisions. Now, let us find out what these programmed and non-programmed decisions are in a little bit of detail for your better understanding. The programmed decisions, as can be made out from the name, are the decisions which are routine and repetitive in nature and are made within the framework of organizational policies and rule. On the other hand, the non-programmed decisions would be the ones which are relevant for solving unique, unusual problems in which various alternatives cannot be decided in advance. Strategic and tactical decisions. Now, as you can see from the name itself, the strategic decision concept is based on strategy, which is a major action plan in an organization. On the other hand, the tactical decision relates to day-to-day working of the organization and is made in the context of well-set policies and procedures. Now, let us try to find out what are the steps that could make a good decision or the steps in decision-making process. The steps would include, or it would start with, 1. Problem identification, then leading to problem analysis, then determining the possible alternatives, 2. Evaluating the impact of alternatives, 2. The selection of an alternative, 2. Implementing the selection. Let's come back to the first step, that is problem identification. Here, it is the responsibility of the team to recognize the existence of a problem or a set of problems, which is the starting point for any decision-making process. Then, after identifying or recognizing the existence of the problem, they need to find out or determine the what, the why, the when, the where, the how, and of course, who of a problem. This is called the second step, which encompasses problem analysis. Now, after the problem has been analyzed, it is important to determine the various possible alternatives that can be explored. Now, this is the third step. Here, the various structuring of resources to solving the process is involved. The fourth step would be evaluating the impact of alternatives. Here, the impact of alternative on all the facts of the enterprise should be taken care of well in advance to make an effective decision. The fifth step would be selection of an alternative course of action after the various alternatives have been identified and evaluated. The selection of an alternative encompasses commitment of resources to a particular or the chosen course of action. Then the sixth would be implementation of the selection. This is providing positive efforts towards the attainment of the organizational goals. So now, dear students, you know that there are 6 steps which should be followed for effective decision making. Let's talk about the methods of group decision making. Now, as you know, managers like to believe that they are accomplished in such group activities like group decision making, goal setting, and problem solving. However, their ability to implement such techniques is often hindered by their lack of understanding of the dynamics of group decision making. As a result, these managers often end up perpetuating problems that they themselves create through their insensitivity to the needs of other group members. Hence, instead of achieving consensus, such managers take decision by the use of their authority. Sometimes they lead the group towards a decision making by minority rule or by majority rule. Now, the better way to achieve consensus would be for them to track how decisions are made and ensure that they are achieved by consultations with group members. The various methods of group decision making are discussed. Let's look into the different methods of group decision making, and I'm sure this is going to be quite interesting. Now, decisions can be made by various methods, and let us discuss them by one. The most prominent method which is used for taking decisions, or to be more specific, group decision making, is decision by lack of responses. Now, as the name suggests, in this method, someone suggests an idea, and before anyone else has said anything about it, without any deliberations, the idea is rejected. In other words, all ideas that have been simply bypassed have, in a sense, been rejected by the group. The idea thus been rejected because the rejections is simply a common decision not to support the idea. Now, this is called decision by lack of responses. The next method could be decision by authority rule. Now, many groups have a power structure that makes it clear that the leader or the chairman or someone in authority will make the ultimate decision. Now, in this case, the group can generate ideas and hold free discussion, but the chairman or the leader may say that he has heard the discussion and has decided upon a given plan. So, this is called decision by authority rule. Decision by minority rule. This is the third method of decision making. Here, a single person can enforce a decision, particularly if he is the chairman and does not give in to the opposition. A common form of minority rule is for 2 or more members to come to a quick and powerful agreement on a course of action and implement it through the chairman or other powerful members of the group. So, this is called decision by minority rule. Another method could be decision by majority rule. Now, if you can think of it from its name and find out what is this, under this method, it is felt that if the majority of the participants feel the same way, it is often assumed that that decision is the best. On the surface, this method seems completely sound, but often it turns out that decisions made by this method are not well implemented, even by the group that made the decision. the strengths of group decision making. Now, all of us know that when a group makes a decision, there are certain strengths to it which could be very important. One, groups generate more complete information and knowledge than by single individuals. Second, they offer increased diversity of views, which is again a strength of group decision making. This also opens up the opportunity for more approaches and alternatives to be considered. Again, the evidence indicates that a group will almost always outperform even the best individual. No doubt about it. And finally, the groups lead to increased acceptance of a solution that has been generated by the group. Apart from the various strengths, the group decision making is generally or it can be marred by certain weaknesses in the nature of being quite time consuming because group decision making takes a lot of time. Secondly, there is a conformity pressure on groups. That is, the members of the group sometimes might be forced to conform to the group pressure in saying yes to the decisions taken by the group. Then, group discussion can be dominated by one or few members, which again would be a weakness, would not lead actually to a group decision making. Or finally, the group decisions, they might suffer from ambiguous responsibility. That is whereby the group members, they are not willing to take up the responsibility of the group decision which has been taken. My dear students, now let's try to find out the various techniques of group decision making. I'm sure you must have heard about some of them earlier as well. Now these could be brainstorming, this could be nominal group technique, which is also called NGT technique. Then there is a technique called Delphi technique. Then there is another one called devil's advocacy. And fifth, we have dialectical inquiry. Let us discuss these one by one. The first technique is called brainstorming. This is a group decision-making technique which aims at generating as many ideas as possible, suspending evaluation until the final decision has been taken. That is, the group keeps on exploring newer ideas and possibilities until they are able to finalize a particular decision. This method is one of the most common and popularly used methods of decision making and has proved to be quite successful in most of the instances. The second important technique is called nominal group technique or the NGT technique. Now, this is a structured approach to group decision making which focuses on generating ideas and choosing the one which best suits the needs of the group. Let's do this technique in a little bit of more detail and find out the various steps that are involved in NGT decision making. Step 1 would be silent generation of ideas, where the lead presents the questions to the group, the individual responses in written format, where group work is not allowed. After this, they move on to the second step, which is a recorded round listing of the ideas, where each member presents an idea in turn. All ideas are listed on a flip chart. No discussion takes place until all the ideas have been recorded. After this, they move on to the third step, where brief discussion of the ideas on the chart is done, whereby there is clarification of the ideas, which leads to common understanding of the problem by the group members, and the various evaluation of the points is done. After this, the third step, they move on to the step 4, where there is preliminary vote on priorities, which is sought from each member. Now here, each member ranks 5 to 7 most important ideas from the flip chart and records them on separate cards. Then the leader counts the votes on the cards and writes them on the chart. Then they move on to the fifth step, that is discussion of the vote, where examination of inconsistent voting patterns is done. In step 6, listing of agreement on the priorities is done. That is, eventually, the final decision is determined by the idea with the highest aggregate ranking. So now you see what are the various 6 steps which have been taken place during the NGT decision making. We move on to the next technique, which is called the Delphi Technique. Now in this technique, members do not meet face to face for group decision. All the decisions are arrived through written communication. It is a systematic means to obtain consensus from a group or a panel of experts. Now the various steps here are: the problem is defined by the Delphi leaders or experts. 1. A sample of experts is selected. Questionnaires are developed and sent out to participants. Responses are compiled and summarized into a questionnaire. Each member receives a copy of results. The participants are asked to re-evaluate the responses. The new responses are compiled and new questions may be prepared. The cycle stops only when the consensus is reached, and ultimately a solution is developed. Let's understand what is devil's advocacy. I'm sure you must have heard about it earlier. Well, it's a technique of group decision making in which groupthink is prevented, whereby an individual is appointed as a devil's advocate to critically question the validity and feasibility of every decision taken by the group. A devil's advocate is entrusted with the task of bringing up the potential problems that might arise after taking a particular decision. This saves the organizations from making costly mistakes by identifying the potential pitfalls well in advance. This individual keeps all the members on their toes and saves the organization from taking wrong decisions. Another technique of group decision making is dialectical inquiry. Now, this is a group decision making technique where a solid debate is encouraged and spearheaded between two opposing set of recommendations. It's a very constructive approach in the sense that on one hand, it leads to conflicting situations, and on the other hand, it brings forth the strengths and weaknesses of both sets of ideas and thus helps in taking a well-informed and a rational decision. On the other hand, brainstorming offers the advantage of encouraging the expression of as many useful ideas as possible, but the disadvantage of wasting the group's time on ideas that are widely impractical. The nominal group technique, with its secret ballot system, offers a structure in which individuals can support or reject an idea without fear of recrimination. Its disadvantage is that there is no way of knowing why individuals voted the way they did. Now, the advantage of the Delphi technique is that Ideas can be gathered from group members who are too geographical separated or busy to meet face to face. Its disadvantage is that members are unable to ask questions to one another. Managers must carefully weigh the advantages and disadvantages of these group decision making tools and adopt the one or some combination of all these that best suits their unique organizational requirements. Now, after we have discussed the different techniques of decision making in the form of brainstorming, NGT, Delphi technique, let's find out what are the factors that should be kept in mind while selecting a particular technique that we have discussed so far. My dear students, it's important to understand when these techniques can be used and under what situations. Well, brainstorming as a technique can be used when the objective is to generate as many ideas as possible for a particular problem. On the other hand, the nominal group technique or the NGT can be adopted when the group members are unwilling to contribute ideas. The third technique, the Delphi technique, can be applied when there is a need for an expert opinion. Now, when the group wants that groupthink should be avoided, devil's advocate or dialectical inquiry can be adopted. When decisions with regard to quality are to be taken, quality circles can be referred to. Now, research has shown that when the teams are made accountable for the decisions, they tend to take well-informed decisions. When the organizations contemplate giving complete empowerment to its employees, the self-managed teams can also be created. Apart from the various advantages of group decision making, there are certain limitations also which can take place in group decision making. This is visible in the nature of two concepts, one of which is called groupthink and the other is called group polarization. Let's find out what are these two. Now, groupthink is a term which is used and we can say which is exhibited in the form of deterioration of the mental efficiency and moral judgment on the part of the group members resulting from group pressure. Another limitation of group decision making is visible in terms of group polarization. Now, this group polarization is exhibited by the tendency of the group members to produce shifts towards more extreme attitudes among members following group discussions. Conditions which aid the emergence of group polarization. Now, it's important to understand what gives rise to group polarization. The first condition is the social comparison approach, where the individuals believe that their views are better than the rest of the group members, especially before rigorous group discussions have taken place. But after the discussion, they realize that their views are not so far from average, which forces them to take extra positions with regard to their viewpoint. Conditions which aid the emergence of group polarization are: the second condition is the presence of persuasive arguments approach, which says that after the group discussion, the members become more confident of their viewpoints and thus they take extreme positions. Conditions which aid the emergence of group polarization are: polarization divides the group into two extreme positions and can be really detrimental to the rational group decision making. Now, both groupthink and group polarization are not good for group decision making. That is why it's recommended to adopt a particular technique depending upon the situation, as has been discussed in detail in the above module. All right, students. Now let us summarize what we have learned. Group decision making is characterized by both strengths and weaknesses. Groups generate more complete information and knowledge. They offer increased diversity of views and increased acceptance of a solution. The downsides include increased time to make decisions, conformity pressures, domination by one or few members, and ambiguous responsibility. And groupthink occurs when members rationalize any resistance and apply direct pressure on those who momentarily express any doubts. In addition, members who have doubts suppress their dissent, and there is an illusion of unanimity. Now, it's more likely to occur when there is a clear group identity, when members hold a positive image of their group they want to protect, and when the member perceives a collective threat to his positive image. Now, the group shift refers to a group decision making phenomena. Group decisions tend to exaggerate the initial position of the individual member, and that shift is more often towards greater risk. Whether or not the group will shift towards greater risk tends to be a function of the members' pre discussion inclinations. Now, while the most common form of group decision making occurs in interacting groups, there are a number of other techniques. Group decision making techniques include brainstorming, nominal groups, electronic meetings. Now, they are an attempt to overcome pressures for conformity with face to face interacting groups. Brainstorming utilizes an idea generating process that encourages any and all the alternatives while withholding any criticism of those alternatives. Now, the group nominal technique restricts discussion or interpersonal communication until all the ideas have been presented. The ideas are silently and independently ranked. Here, the idea with the highest aggregated ranking determines the final decision. A more recent type of group decision making technique is electronic decision making, where up to 50 people sit around a horseshoe shoe table and contribute via computer input.